interactions. I think he's a very impressive player, and the more I spoke to him in the interviews, the more he sounded impressive as well. So
yes.
I kind of went with my gut on that one. But talk us through Group C out of these two matchups. A little bit later on, it's going to be Renman versus Island Cat, and then Tyler versus Teen Show. See a few...
5 out of 5 blue steel, sorry. It got me straight away.
Get behind as well. Composure, it's the one thing that impressed me the most, to be honest, was that the second we sat down and had that time, you know, what Sottle will be most interested in, what does he think about the lineups?
Well, they did my job for me, Raven. I don't really have too much to add. Like,
talk about the bans.
Yeah, I mean, the bans are interesting because the odd rogue going down from lnguagehackr is kind of a nod from BloodTrail that he understands his Malagos Druid is going to be banned. Otherwise, that odd rogue is not particularly threatening to the lineup where Malagos Druid can come out and counter it. But because he understands the way the texture of the matchups goes...
But it is no more. Game number 1 between BloodTrail and lnguagehackr. It's going to be the Warlock versus the Hunter. Woo! I am ready for some Hearthstone right now, Sol. We hang out a lot, but for me, that was too long. Got him.
Death Rattle Hunter versus Even Lock. The wrong way around, though. I'd say it's a great opening for the series. It's actually one of the more even matchups between the two decks. But I really, sooner rather than later, want to see BloodTrail piloting that Hunter. But no surprise, good mulligan from lnguagehackr, throws away the Candle Shot because it's not a deck where BloodTrail has any minions that Candle Shot particularly interacts with, keeps the Spider Bomb because, of course, he needs an answer to those huge turn 4 minions, the Mountain Giants and the Twilight Drakes, as soon as they come down.
Right, and this Vulgar Homunculus in BloodTrail's hand is actually great for pushing the Hunter away from those kinds of plays, right? A lot of the time you can just play Spider Bomb and be like, yeah, play a minion into this, friend, because if it's a Giant or a Twilight Drake, it's dead already. Right. But the Homunculus makes a pretty big deal here, as it means that BloodTrail, not necessarily this turn, but next turn, can actually just have something already in the way. And this is part of lnguagehackr's build in his Hunter. This is the Ziliax, Argus, and Mind Control tech, which is the build, at least that I've been favoring recently.
The 3 rightmost cards that started in his deck, in his hand right now.
I love it if, like...
in order.
You don't
know how happy this makes me right now.
It wouldn't have happened, but I would love it if we saw, our production saw this, and then instead of the siding, arrows just appeared to the hand. I'll be like, oh, yeah. I think can't really argue with that.
But on a serious note, I think the most unique one there is the Defender of Argus. I think Ziliax and Mind Control Tech are being fairly core right now. Oh, he's coining Shaw. Oh, look at the right-hand side of the hand now. It's beautiful. I love everything.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
This is a really good hand, because now the Spider Bomb is active and you can manipulate it, right? Which is the important part with being able to attack with it on the turn. If Shaw isn't dealt with, well, let's give another shout out though, because I may be slightly incorrect, which is fine, and I preemptively apologize, but this list from lnguagehackr looks exactly like Zilay's list he was playing a lot of when he was making tweets about the list he played a week or so ago.
That's true.
And he was saying double MCT core, and he did play one Argus as well.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact 30 cards, but yeah, I think you're right. It looked
pretty sure it's
very similar. The Doomsayer is a pretty clean response to the Houndmaster Shaw. No surprise to see lnguagehackr coining out when he did. Not just to make the right side of his hand very pleasing, but also because there wasn't really a good answer available, right? It's not like Spellstones have been massively upgraded yet to be able to just snipe them out. So Doomsayer behind a taunt was about the best response BloodTrail had. About the worst thing that lnguagehackr could expect to have to deal with.
Does have a clean kill though, if he wants to commit the resources in. I mean, I value Shaw extremely highly, so I can't imagine not making this play to kill the Doomsayer and leave Shaw onto the board. There is an option now as the double trade, or you can actually use Hunter's Mark to get Shaw to go 3 to face. Might be a bit overkill, but if your opponent's playing a Doomsayer, maybe you're not expecting some of the bigger minions to come down next.
Yeah, I think that does. I think using Hunter's Mark as 3 damage in this matchup does seem a little bit ambitious, but yeah, as long as the sequencing there was correct, the full clear was available with the rushing Spider Bomb, but I think BloodTrail still was kind of happy with that scenario, because as soon as there was some damage put on the Houndmaster Shaw, then BloodTrail can take care of it with the Spellstone. And so maybe that's the argument from lnguagehackr's spot, because then it's not just using the Hunter's Mark as 3 damage, it's using the Hunter's Mark to keep it out of range of Spellstone. Spellstone where you know one Homunculus has hit the board, right? You have a good read on how much those Spellstones deal.
And now this board impact is much lower. If a cube, or maybe a bit risky, but if a cube could have come down onto the shore and not answered with silence, things start to get real crazy real quick.
Ding! Sorry, that was the Raven talks about cubing shore bell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can work with production on getting an official noise. But the guys coming down on curve quite safely now because of this low impact turn from lnguagehackr means that a lot of the big explosive plays are now gone. Hunter's Mark gone, Play Dead gone. Those even tracking actually once resources become a little bit low, if there's no Rexark, gone. Although it's not game winning, it certainly majorly affects lnguagehackr's plans going forward with this deck.
Another argument for using that Hunter's Mark when he could to protect the shore value. Of course, I mean, my initial reaction straight away was like, come on, there's some big things that you're going to have to.
I would have used Hunter's Mark because it was short.
Ding, 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 ding.
Second Spellstone as well in BloodTrail's hands, so he can deal with most decent-sized minions on demand.
But I think that's kind of my point, right? Is when there's Skulking Geist on the other side against the 1-mana life tap deck, like they're gonna draw it a lot of the time. You can't just sit there and use the Hunter's Mark on the perfect target. I think finding a spot where you can find a convincing usage for it and keeping Houndmaster Shore out of range of Spellstone is a pretty convincing usage.
Agreed. Wouldn't dream of arguing with that. And now this might just be too much already at this point. The game sort of flipped on that short turn and the lack of follow-up from lnguagehackr with the Zilliax because it was exactly like Zilliax and say not a Grizzly on 5, it meant that cubing it didn't feel that satisfying, right? Because Zilliax has much lower impact. Cubing the Grizzly might have paid off a little bit more, a little bit harder to kill. It was 2 3/12s. Warlock almost has no answer to that. So this is kind of running away for BloodTrail right now. He's doing pretty well.
Yeah, the answers are preemptive for the even lot. BloodTrail's list does play 2 Spellbreakers, which, of course, one of them came down to answer this anyway. So unless he was able to cube Activator very rapidly, which with his Play Dead's gone is extremely unlikely as well. It didn't really matter too much what he ended up cubing because he expects, again, the life tap deck is going to have drawn one of their 2 Spellbreakers with extreme regularity by this point of the game.
And what BloodTrail can do now is continue to chain huge threats. You can trade off the 4/3 Spellbreaker into the cube, just take the Mind Control tech out with the Giant, and then just play Lich King. Like, Lich King has dual effect of 1, being a really good card, and 2, defending the Giant from any kind of attacks. Giant will also be outside of range of a flanking strike. The Geist opens up so many more plays for the Warlock in this matchup.
It does.
It's kind of insane, right?
And I'm wondering whether this is the Lich King turn, because yeah, there was Spellstone Shroom and Hellfire Shroom, both things that I was looking at. I was still assessing the Spellstone line as I got there, but I guess using Hellfire first, actually, now that that occurs to me, gives you more value out of your Spellstone later on. Now, BloodTrail even going to choose, maybe he wants to Demonic Project here, so he can potentially deny a Kathrena from the opponent.
Okay.
Getting Howlfiend over to lnguagehackr and picking up burst damage himself in the form of the Doomguard. That was a fantastic outcome for him. With the Kathrena not in hand for lnguagehackr, that was about as good as it got.
It really is. This is just going from bad to worse for lnguagehackr. I think his face kind of just displays that, right? It's like, okay.
But again,
Game 2.
We have to take note. Like, I think BloodTrail ended up making a very sensible play there. I think, you know, playing the Lich King was the obvious line. I think the Spellstone, Hellfire, Shroom Brewer kind of combinations were more valid. And then he found this Demonic Project line, which is perfectly reasonable as well. But he looked very unsure towards the end of the turn about what he was supposed to be doing. And yeah, you're going to hear us harp on about this a lot because it's a big talking point for the player.
Admirable shivers right now in the caster room waiting for this match, and just the insta-concede.
For the record, when Doomguard is lethal, I agree with Admirable. You should play it from hand. That one checks out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Admirable 1, the rest of us 18,056,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolute silliness coming from Sol, which is a rare thing indeed. Let's move straight on to game number 2. BloodTrail on Sol's waiting.
Let's go. All right.
Versus the Taunt Druid.
And I can already confirm he's learned everything that he needs to know about Death Rattle Hunter, because that is a Keleseth in the opening hand. He's put the hours in. He's grinded it out. He is a Death Rattle Hunter master now.
Yes, as with any Kellerset deck.
Oversold a little bit, maybe?
I think it was okay, actually.
Okay.
I think it came off pretty well. But lnguagehackr also an exceptionally good Druid player with Wild Growth and Nourish in hand as well. And that ramp is probably, I would say, way more influential than the Kellerset in the Hunter deck.
I'm trying to decide whether I want to take umbrage with that statement or not. I guess I'll let it slide.
What to do?
I mean, if you don't agree, I'm happy to discuss it.
I think way more influential, I think, might be overstating it.
The double ramp in a Taunt Druid deck is more than Kellerset in Death Rattle.
More, yes. Way more
Not way
was how
more?
you put it.
What if it was just way more?
But yeah, that one's fine.
Okay.
We'll settle on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
deal. This Ironwood Golem is going to be a little bit frustrating as well for BloodTrail, not because it's a threat in itself, but more it's an awkward amount of health to deal with. The Candle Shot does help a lot if there's an activate for this egg to just punch through it in one go, but in general, Ironwood Golem actually chews up all the little minions that Death Rattle Hunter has on the board a little bit earlier on.
Right. There's a nice flanking strike here if he wants it, though. Yep, BloodTrail.
Like I said, the Candle Shot really helps just make those numbers add up. As it often does.
Nice and clean, keeping the pressure up, making sure he's pushing through some form of damage, while lnguagehackr just spends his time ramping, and that exclamation from my co-commentator is because that is the second Sleepy Dragon drawn alongside a Primordial Drake, which is very much weakening the power of lnguagehackr's eventual Dragon Hackers.
One thing I'm very interested in is how BloodTrail, or most importantly, when BloodTrail uses Hunter's Mark, and on what. Because there are too many taunts and not enough Hunter's Marks in this deck. Even you could say that unless you cube the bombs. Same, right?
Right.
So the moment you use a Hunter's Mark for a kill, that kill has to be worth X damage, or worth the game almost a lot of the time.
Agreed.
And it's very easy to fall in the trap of, oh, Hunter's Mark, Candle Shot, face. It's like, well, does that actually do anything towards you winning the game? And it is very hard to judge.
I do like this. I like cashing in the Spider Bomb Death Rattle now as opposed to using the Hunter's Mark, because you have a 3-1 Spider Bomb on board at that point, which is very easy for Druid to deal with, and then drop another big minion. So the Hunter's Mark is the more universal answer for you right now. So even though using it there would have allowed BloodTrail to push 3 more damage, in the long term, using it there is probably more beneficial.
And that's my point, right? If like, oh, does 3 damage actually win you this game? Probably not, right? So you may as well hold on and try and get something big. And we'll say as well, this is the tough decision point for lnguagehackr. He can draw, he can open summons to pull out the another golem, or he could just play a Sleepy Dragon. We can see that the Hunter's Mark is there and does punish the initial Sleepy Dragon. It opens up a lot of damage.
It's a big fat 4-12 for me every single day of the week.
Well, also, worst case, it means your second one's normally safe if you have to. Just go Sleepy into Sleepy. The odds on them having both is a little bit rough.
Ooh. Rexar has to be. His hand's so light on value right now.
Not playable with the Mark this turn.
No. lnguagehackr looks upset with the Hunter's Mark, but he does have another 4-12 left to come down.
Well, he does have armor gain, so it's not as if, oh, I've got my taunt, but he can keep pressing and 2 damage hero power. Like, lnguagehackr can move out of range of lethal almost whenever he wants, and hello. How many dragons are we looking at?
There is one more Primordial Drake left, yep.
He has to do it. This is effectively the same thing. And
There is the Hydro as well.
Yeah, most importantly, puts more stuff on the board, and then he already has cube to proc Hadronox.
lnguagehackr trying to work out if there's any world where he needs to coin for 1 armor here, essentially.
Is there any punish for using it, is my question? Does the coin at this point in the game change the game that much? If you're going to cube your Hadronox next turn, the game plays itself at this point, right?
It's a fair point.
I would always just say, you know what? Let's just get 1 extra armor, why not on this one?
That's it. There is that 1 remaining Primordial Drake.
Oh! Hang on.
There it is.
It's just lethal, right?
Doesn't have mana for hero power.
Yeah,
this is what the coin hero power ends up playing around, is the top deck 8/8 Devilsaur cleanly killing. Forgot to take into consideration that the Devilsaur was going to be buffed when I was considering lethal out top.
Way more impactful than Ramp.
Thank you. It's filling in my punchline for me. Thank you. Years and years of synergy all leading up to that one moment.
You took too long to get there for me, Saul.
Yeah.
Too much of a build. Does it? This push just doesn't matter though, right?
I mean, it matters. It's always a thing.
Things are things.
The
It's just there's so much armor.
Yeah, the Hadronox combined with the armor and the fact they're both playable this turn is enormous. And combined with the fact that the Charged Devilsaur can be dealt with, something that I was talking about in our lead-in to this matchup, which is no great surprise because I talked about all the things in the world in the lead-in to this match, is that he can kill the Devilsaur on board with little effort, which you have to do, Hunter.
Wait, how's he killing the Devilsaur? Am I being silly? Are you cubing and branching past this turn?
Yes. Cube plus armor and then plus attack.
Oh, you're going +1 attack. Okay.
Yeah. Because you don't need to, like, you just need to get out of range of the hero power, right? You've got an enormous taunt wall that's not being pushed through.
Just double checking.
Yeah.
In case I was missing something that didn't involve that play, that's all. But the attacks were a little bit awkward without that plus attack. The attacks didn't really add up very well.
The plus attack is necessary, and I guess I should have clarified it. This also gives you the option of just, like, using your Hadronox and not using the cube. I don't really see any merit in that.
Right.
And, yep, language hacker, going to take the line. And then seven's just plenty in this situation when you have that much of a taunt wall in front of you.
Yeah, and even these slow and steady taunts have really just put paid to this game for Language Hacker unless BloodTrail discovers perfect beasts at this point. And by perfect beasts, I mean a whole lot of poison, a whole lot of AoE, and maybe a bit of both.
A whole lot of Hydra, a whole lot of Blowpat. No?
No.
Okay.
I'm not with you on that one. Now, BloodTrail probably sees this game slipping further and further away. Not only do you need perfect beasts to clear multiple times, you also now need the damage to get through, which gets progressively harder.
Yeah, now even like the rushing Blowbat poison, Language Hacker correctly identifying that the best way to play around that is to pop open his own Hadronox. So the Hadronox die at the same time as all the taunt minions to any such effect, and then the Hadronox will respawn the taunt board straight again afterwards.
And now basically Language Hacker is just saying, you have to do too many things in any given turn to win this game. It's impossible. BloodTrail has the realization, just gotta discover the beast just to double check why not. But yeah, that is gonna be a game, and Language Hacker does even it up at that one apiece now. We are playing at breakneck speed. So both players go straight into the next game. It's gonna be Hunter versus Hunter Mirror, although the decks are ever so slightly different, as we mentioned a little bit earlier.
BloodTrail keeping Katharina, big fan. Language Hacker mulliganing into the Prince Keleseth, also a big fan.
Is that better?
Beautiful, perfect, no complaints.
First time. And these candle shots are very strange in this matchup. They normally make up the numbers as opposed to kill anything specifically on their own outside of a Hunter's Mark combo. It's always just, oh, 1 extra damage to kill this thing. As opposed to its normal usage, say, versus aggro decks.
It's just it's a card of necessity, right? Like, it's just a card that has to go in the deck because some aggro decks are just going to slap you around if you don't have a candle shot, and it's good enough with the combination of, you know, Hunter's Mark that you have in the deck that it's not an absolute liability against the slower deck.
And this opening hand is looking very, very good for BloodTrail. He has options of Coin Master into Flanking Strike with the instant attack 3/3, depending on what Language Hacker's board looks like, or he could just play it slow because the options he has now with Cube means that he can just wait and wait and wait and wait and then use Coin Katharina 1 turn early.
Right.
Looks like he's going to do the slow play.
I think this is reasonable. Master Short can actually be like a pretty valuable late game tool in this matchup if it gets to that point. It can also run away with the game in the early game, so I understand that. But getting this Devilsaur egg down is just such a great target for Death Rattle activations as soon as possible here. Maybe even looking at a Coin Cube kind of play.
That's interesting to me, that play. Wonder what you thought about
Language or BloodTrails?
Language.
Okay.
Procking the egg with the MCT and then flanking strike the dino.
I think because he has Candle Shot equipped, this is fine. Like, you can see where it ends up, right?
Yes.
If he didn't have Candle Shot equipped, I agree your way of doing it is better. But I think it's unnecessary in the spot that he was in. He can just kind of freely push 3 and not have to worry about it because it just ends up as a 5-1.
Yeah, and this looks very, very nice now for lnguagehackr. The clean kill on the Houndmaster on the turn it's played, and the clear up of that of the dinosaur there was absolutely huge. And now we see what Hunter matches often look like around these turns of flanking into flanking into flanking into flanking. Strike. But now this is getting scary. Well, these are both by Kelsen. The second BloodTrail just coins Katharina. Hunter doesn't have a correct answer to that play, to be completely honest. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah, lnguagehackr, even with the buffed minions, is going to find himself just struggling a little bit. Ziliax is a nice draw just for a bit of a tempo swing on this turn or wherever he wants to play it, but he can just, if he wants, keep on developing Witchwood Grizzlies. Try and use Ziliax for additional tempo on the following turn, because he could be expecting a coin Katharina here from BloodTrail, meaning if he holds on to his fastest cards, he can kind of line them up with the Katharina turn and try and swing back as hard as he can.
Kalaseth kind of slapping BloodTrail in the face on the turn before you Katharina pull out a big beast. Did aim it though, so it's going to hit for 7. That candle shot going to add up pretty nicely.
Yep. And now this is the exact talking point again. Like, why hold on to a Ziliax there when it was fine on the board? Because you know coin Katharina can happen, and you know you are just not allowed to leave a charged Devilsaur alive ever. If you leave Crush or Devilsaur alive against Death Rattle Hunter, you are probably dead.
That is very true. And lnguagehackr now, or throughout this whole game, to be completely honest, has suffered from no death rattles to activate.
Right.
There have been cards that would have looked quite nice, mainly this Terror Scale, but it's all the stuff he's pulled is the defensive tools that you don't want to pull naturally outside of Ziliax. He's not able to do anything, so now there are limited choices. Ziliax into the 7-3 to kill it off, and hope that Katharina has nothing left to pull. I don't know.
Right.
Because Katharina, the power of this card is that it cannot be dealt with by pretty much any class in one go. It just can't. And now all I want to see is Cube on Katharina. No activate makes that a little bit worse.
I think we're actually very likely to see that. I think there's just enough value left to make it worth it. He gets a Grizzly here off the immediate activation, still has one more left after this, I believe, and then just 2 6/6s inside a 4/6.
I was just going to say, I've won many a game by killing someone with like 4 Katharinas on the board because it's a 6/6. What kills that when you're duplicating them? Not a lot. And the shake of the head from lnguagehackr is just saying, well, yeah, I kind of have got nothing to do this game. And that's pretty much been the story. Rexar just for some extra salt in the wound, I think, from BloodTrail means that lnguagehackr now not only is thinking, how do I deal with this board, it's how do I deal with all of these zombies now.
And that was actually the almost last window of hope for lnguagehackr, because he had Hunter's Mark for this taunt in hand and he had King Crush. And he was just poking away with those hero powers over the last couple of turns to the point where that combination might have been able to get the job done if he could stall out.
And the fact that Grizzlies are taunt is huge now because you couldn't even, say, pop the cube, play MC Tech, and try and steal Katharina that then pulls something for him. You know, you've got to consider these options when you play Mind Control Tech, but BloodTrail's just like, this is just a lot of damage.
I don't know, Crush isn't buffed. Never mind. There's one off. I like the do-nothing play, though.
Yeah, I mean,
BloodTrail has no need to do anything at this point. He's winning the game at a cakewalk. See BloodTrail just quickly pet his little dinosaur over on the left-hand side there. Say, all right, Crush, buddy, we got this. lnguagehackr's King Crush not going to be nearly as effective as this boy coming down to crush the game now. BloodTrail does get the monkey off his shoulder, does pick up a win with that Death Rattle Hunter, and now goes one game away from going through the winners matchup in this group.
He definitely does. Now, 3 to keep was the impact there, and lnguagehackr. So we move on to game number 4. It's going to be on that Hunter again, and BloodTrail on this Shudderwock Shaman. And I don't believe there's anything too much to write home about with this list. This looks about as standard as a deck you're going to get. What I will mention is, because you would have seen it yesterday if you were watching the Fall Championship, is this list does not have the Giggling Inventors in. This isn't the German Shudderwock. So BloodTrail will probably
You don't want to have the German Shadow Walk.
So BloodTrail will probably get the chance to play it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great opening from lnguagehackr. This is literally the cards he was missing from the last game. He's found them now and drawn them in his opening, so he's looking pretty good.
And this is, of course, a strong matchup for the BloodTrail Hunter. It's just so very simple to make a mess of a board that Shadow Walk Shaman doesn't really interact with. You'd think maybe on the surface, like, yeah, you know, the Earthshock Hex deck against my Deathrattle Cube deck, like, maybe that lines up quite poorly for me. But it's just so easy to manipulate board states where it's just like, hey, you need to, like, Hex and Earthshock and then Volcano this board for you to be happy with your turn.
Earthshock my cube with minions in. Okay, I still hit you for 4 next turn.
Right.
Right? So, and even now, like, this is an exact example, right? Well, you can only really Hex that turn. Which one do you Hex? The 5 damage to face that's coming your way, or the egg that could create more 5/5s?
Yes. What I will say is Electra is one of the key options for Shaman in this matchup because, as I said, you end up having to do effects multiple times to clear boards, and just playing that vanilla from cards in your hand just doesn't really line up a lot of the time. You know, it's just too mana restrictive, whereas using Electra instead can be a little bit of a swing turn for you, but you do then end up overloading yourself so heavily that if BloodTrail Hunter then has a refill on the following turn where you just delay your huge punishment by 1 turn.
And now, as we move on to the, sort of the mid game here for lnguagehackr, I think we saw him take a bit of a time over that turn because one, he has a few 4 mana options, but also that card that you can see in his hand, his opponent runs 2 of is the Mind Control tech, and because we've just said you make some pretty awkward minions, you don't really want them to give them to your opponent. So whether you go wide or whether you can afford to go wide in this game is quite a difficult decision.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, you know, if people at home, like, struggle in knowing when and when not to play around Mind Control tech, try and visualize, like, the next 2 or 3 turns of the game if your goal is to just keep 3 minions in play, right? And try and decide, like in this spot, if BloodTrail was to play Saronite Chain Gang, could I continue to just have 3 minions on the board and push through his Saronite Chain Gang and be threatening damage? Like, the answer is no, really, without that Mossy Horror that he's just drawn off the top that kind of changes it. So at that point, like, you say to yourself, in the next 2 turns, I'm going to be committing into a Mind Control tech anyway, so I might as well just do it now when it's kind of minimized in its effect.
And also as well, that because of the Mind Control tech in your own hand, you can swing back the other way. So there is an almost backswing that can happen quite often. And now this is just
5, 8, 13,
15,
15, 17, 20 health on the board. That's too much.
I was like, no, BloodTrail's on 15, not 20. And then I realized what you were counting. It's not going to come down along with the Glacier Shard and the Killer Set. There are a lot of 2s on that Lightning Storm. Too many for BloodTrail's opinion, I imagine.
Yeah.
This, the egg may be indifferent, but the Mind Control tech surviving and just killing off this Mana Tide, if it's so desired by lnguagehackr, is frustrating.
Yes, and Electra Storm was an availability there. You can see by what was left behind that Electra Storm had a decent chance of clearing the board. But I think BloodTrail recognizes he can't afford to be that overloaded at this point because this is just a very easy turn for lnguagehackr to just go again with the cards that he has available. And also that Electra can be more valid later on in the game with more of the high-impact board clears to be able to, like, bust open cubes and nuke through them.
I think I really like Mossy Horror this turn. Because one, you're still just having 3 minions on board, which is fine. But also, at this health total for BloodTrail, even Mossy Horror just living, say there's Lightning Storm number 2, even Mossy Horror living chipping for 2 along with the hero power, well, he's dead in 3 turns. So, I did pull out a Volcano and it was just a Mossy Horror addition to the board. Crazy. Oh.
Ooh. I would like them all, please.
Yeah, but that one's the best one.
Yeah. Shaw here gives him the ability to tempo out again on the following turn, and like if Chain Gang number 2 comes down, he can deal with it incredibly efficiently with the kind of hand that he has right now. And outside of healing range, Chain Gang number 2 is about the only defensive ability BloodTrail has available to him. It does look like he is going to resort to the healing rain, recognizes that Chain Gang is just not going to stop pressure when there's a Houndmaster Shaw sat on the board.
snap Katharina play. Katharina can kill the Manatide Totem, depending on what's pulled out. Quickly, okay. Not too bad. Language Hacker. Just a clean play of the 3-attack menu will kill the Manatide.
I knew he was going to kill it with the 312. It just feels better.
This is what I was talking about again, just to reiterate Katharina points is, okay, you've hexed Katharina, there's still a 312 on the board that you, okay, you can double hex because you've drawn it, but this is just a percentage of the deck. It's not like, oh, if I kill Katharina, I win the game. It's like, no, there's everything else.
Right. BloodTrail kind of out of options here. He is just going to have to drop the chain gang and hope that the Shore doesn't cause too much chaos. But Language Hacker has pretty much all the chaos available to him right now.
Would you like many Grizzlies against a deck that simply will never be able to kill them?
Seems like a reasonable prospect.
The frustrating thing is you have to kill the... If you want to do it that way, you have to kill the Grizzly that can actually go face.
Yes.
Which is normally not what happens. You normally get to go face because Shore gives you minions rush.
Yes. Which I think is what Language Hacker is looking at here with the egg play instead.
My argument is, do you need that 3 damage to face this turn? Does it make
always 3 damage to face? You know what I do for 3 damage to face?
Nope. What?
I don't know, ask Admirable. He always says it, and I've always wondered. I never got around to asking him.
Yeah, whenever he says that, he just gets ignored by TJ.
Yeah.
TJ probably just asks him a question back about snacks, and then the conversation continues.
Lightning can strike.
I think even Electra can't dig BloodTrail out of right now. Because yeah, you go back to 4, but this is what I was meaning where does the 3 damage make a giant impact? Next turn is, I don't think it was particularly setting up lethal. And obviously this heal to 30 changed a few things, but there's still so much gas in Language Hacker's hand.
I think the 3 damage was definitely worth a lot in that spot. Like, you had your opponent very low, you are still currently in Smork hero power form, and your opponent's already used 1 healing rain. So I think pushing damage there and setting up for like the directly lethal outcome is very valid.
I think what like niggles at me a little bit is that the egg is just on the board. That's the frustration, right? It just takes up a spot on the board when that could be a Grizzly. And you've seen Volcano, you've seen Lightning Storm as well. And it just means you've just -1 slot, and now these frogs are actually a little bit annoying as well. Yeah. Because there's no good way to clear them off. Is this where you cube your own frog?
Are you referring to a certain well-played moment that is aired in the Gamer Sensei's Rusty pieces?
Maybe, it's just a question.
Because I'm pretty sure Stranglethorn Tiger's better in that play on that turn. I don't know. We can talk about it.
Now.
It's actually a little bit weird, isn't it? There's a lot of 0 attack minions on board.
Yeah.
Okay, so now swapping the egg for a cube and a 5/5, and Language Hacker's probably just at this point, after seeing both hexes, probably just presumes that cube will never die, to be completely honest. He either loses the game from crazy Shadow Walks happening out of nowhere, or he wins at this point. So the 2 eggs on the board might not happen for him, which is probably what he's hoping at this point.
Yeah, crucially for Language Hacker there as well, he set up lethal for himself with the cubing with getting the another 5/5 on the board.
Yeah.
But BloodTrail still has options against that. His Life Drinker would have kept him alive, but I think Hagatha there is the best case scenario for BloodTrail, who's just about now found his way through the storm and is looking to actually take the game into his own circumstances here and say, okay, now I'm going to start playing Shadowwalk Shaman, and you're the one that's going to have to worry about me playing my win condition. If he can get through this one board that he's facing down now, he might just be able to turn the corner, but the lack of healing rains can be a very big deal here.
Yeah, and the worry now is the Zombies, I believe, is a...
Earth Shock. Frost Shock.
Is a Stampeding Kodo with Wind Fury, because I think he took the Young Dragonhawk to make that beast. So that is a 4-attack minion. Yeah, there you go. Where that can deal 8 damage on its own, and there are no hexes left. There are no Frost Shocks left. How do you
there are infinite Frost Shocks left, Raven. all the Frost Shocks you ever needed.
And that draw, one off lethal. I like playing King Crush and hitting him in the face.
Scared of mind control tech at all? I feel like BloodTrail may just need a healing rain by the end of this game from a random minion to find his way out of this. Zolaring the Life Drinkers is nice, but it's not like that one-turn security that healing rain gives you. And that's the kind of play BloodTrail needs, right? He needs one turn where his play is good enough that next turn he can ignore what Hunter's doing. That's basically the two-turn setup that he needs.
lnguagehackr just terrified of mind control tech here? Because that was a relatively weak turn considering he has a 6-mana fledgling to play.
Right. I think he's also playing around Grumble a little bit, like he wants to remove minions from the board.
Aha!
Cubed 5/5 though. Feral Spirits!
No, there's X
my.
in that cube.
Oh, is that X
the
in there?
X.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But still, the cube is a very high value minion that's extremely difficult for BloodTrail to clear in its entirety.
Not a taunt though.
It's not, but what are taunts are those Feral Spirits that he's just rolled off the Bewitch. Takes care of the 5/1 as well. He's chipping away at this board state.
Right. It's the committal to overload that's my question now. Because there's a chance that BloodTrail skips the Feral Spirits.
Yeah, because killing the 5/1 there just does enough for him. Like, he's playing around King Crush already, and now double Feral Spirits. He can stall out for so long, but the weird thing about these Feral Spirits turns is that they're not the kind of turn you want, because yes, they buy you a turn, but they don't buy you a turn where your next turn is then Shudderwock, right? Like that can't happen.
BloodTrail will be adding together now. Okay, next turn, Feral Spirit into Grumble, which he actually can't do next turn. So he is minimum 3 turns away from Shudderwock. If he chooses to Feral Spirit.
He's overloaded 2 or 1 from
2. The 1 damage spell overloads you for 2, I believe. I think it's right.
So yeah, he's struggling to set up a 2-turn, because as you said, like, those Feral Spirits are great in terms of defensive options, but because he's going on an 8-mana turn next turn, and then trying to find an entire turn where he can just play Shudderwock, like, those Feral Spirits don't really bridge the gap for it.
And it's not like Hunter's going to be exhausted of options right now, right? Oh, it had stealth. I didn't realize the bird had stealth as well. That is also pretty huge. Just bear in mind, the zombies, or at least the Stampeding Kodo, can kill one of the Feral Spirits on demand.
Glacial Shard's a huge pickup, because that's like a very high tempo option that he can use here.
And the Bat's Lifesteal Rush. It's the crowd cheering for the robot.
I'm not entirely sure what's happening, but okay.
Are you ever? Went on this desk with me.
Yeah, you're being dumb. That's usually what's going on.
So it was a compliment.
It's a fairly casual. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
All right. Aha! Self-owned. Damn.
Ooh, stable evolution. 4 goes at the evolves right now.
Fate Spinner with no death roll. Lord of the Arena, yeah, okay, we'll take it. Jams on his cube.
I don't mind that. You don't want eggs being bounced.
You don't want eggs on the board, yeah, makes sense. Chooses to go 6 into 7 with his last option off the Unstable, which I believe actually isn't a significant stat gain on average. I don't know whether he would have been better off going with one of his other minions, but I guess like
3 into 4, 1 into 2. They're not great, are they?
No,
2 into 3.
It's a fair point. Yeah.
And now lnguagehackr, does he just not attack? Does he? Okay, he's going for the 2/3. Going for the mind control tech as well. Gets the 4/1. Ah, that's what BloodTrail was doing. Playing around there. Just gave him a 4/1 instead of a fully healed minion.
Right, and actually, like, the fact that he landed on this Guardian of Kings is bizarrely very, very good for him, because he then gets to grumble
and heals. Oh my, it's a battle cry, so Shudderwock will heal him up even more along with those Life Drinkers.
That's crazy. BloodTrail had a Glacial Shard on board there as well that he chose to trade before Grumbling, which could have been of great value to him as well. But as I mentioned, BloodTrail needed to find turns that didn't involve Feral Spirit. So what he ended up doing is front-loading one Feral Spirit turn, really extending onto the board as hard as he could on that Feral Spirit turn. The unstable evolution helped, don't get me wrong, making like a huge board state that couldn't get answered. But then off the back of that one high-tempo turn, he was able to take his lower-tempo turn, get Grumble value, get that set up, and now BloodTrail has everything in his court for the following turn.
Yeah, this is just kind of slipped through lnguagehackkr's fingers at this point, because these things that he couldn't really, you know, guess it was going to happen because they were coming from hacker throw effects, and it's just led to worse and worse situations. And you even saw then him sat and paused as to whether he even wanted to press the Rexar hero power this turn, because maybe he has to make plays that don't do that, the Zombies and maybe one of the bombs. He did get what I think was a pretty mediocre beast with that the TJ Dinosaur.
Ravasaur run, it can be okay when you're like trying to push and you already have a board consolidated and it comes down with the adapt and ends up really sticky with high stats. But
he's got push phase, okay.
When you're trying to rebuild, usually not as strong.
And that was an unoverloaded turn, right? From BloodTrail?
Yeah,
it was 10 mana.
Yeah, 10 now, yeah.
Well, BloodTrail maybe knocking on the door.
And with the Grumble on board, lnguagehackr knows that has 0% failure rate, so he's not even going to wait it out. And Blood